Nope. No music today.
You don't.
I failed as the Facebook Live, YouTube Live host here. Podcast is what everybody refers this to, although it's not a podcast at all. Normally we have music. We don't.
It's the show.
The show.
That's
how
what
things
it is.
going, Dan?
Great. Can't complain. We're up and running in the spring market. Things are busy again, which is really good. So
they are. So we have a super special guest today. One of the main questions that we get as agents is, how do I finance a property? I have poor credit. I need to improve my credit. Where do we go from here? And I don't have any good answers for them. I always refer them to a lender who kind of pushes them wherever they go. But today we have Stephen Robert with Bedrock Credit America on, and we are going to bring him on live right now. I should have been a little smoother. I should have brought you on and said that. I'm still working on it. But here we go. Stephen Robert,
great.
Bedrock Credit America. Thanks for coming out. And
absolutely.
Tell us a little bit about what you guys do.
Absolutely. Thank you, Mike. Thank you, Dan, for having me here. My name is Stephen Robert. I'm the CEO of Bedrock Credit America. For the past 17 years, I've been doing credit education and restoration. So today, I just really want to have a conversation about what I'm seeing on a daily basis that are causing problems for your borrowers and clients, and what we can do to make sure they're not actually making the situation worse, and that they're actually having the correct information they need to understand what credit's really all about.
That's great, because I think we all are looking to improve our credit a little bit, and I honestly don't know the first thing about it. So, Dan, do you have any questions right off before
No, I'll let you hit the ground running. Kind of just the framework for the credit and people buying a house, and then we'll jump in, because I think I told you on our pre-show. I'm going to have a ton of questions, because I got a ton of buyers who are in the situation of bad credit and that need to work on it to get to fix it so they could buy a home. So you're
right.
You're the SME on this one.
The main question we get from anybody that's in the initial stages of trying to buy a home is, how do I qualify for a mortgage? My credit, it's got some dings on the credit. I don't really know where it is. I know it's not great, but I don't know where it is. Where do I start? And I've always referred people to lenders and let them deal with it. And they're the people that are arranging the financing. It's not really our end, but this is going direct to the man that does it. So if I came to you with that question, I don't really know what my credit is, but I know it's not great. Where do I start?
So the first thing is really understanding what you need to look at. And on a daily basis, I get people that are using those free websites, and they're saying, well, I think I have a 650 or 620 or 700, whatever it is. But the problem with that is those free websites are giving you credit reports and credit scores, which are completely different than what lenders use. And again, on a daily basis, that same person that has a 650 on that free website, when the lender actually does pull credit, it might be a 550. And that can be very confusing and frustrating for consumers, not realizing that the third-party websites is just so drastically different, because what lenders use is not a credit score, but actually a FICO credit score. On top of that, it takes it a step further, because once you start hearing people say, oh, but a FICO score, you know what, that's on my credit card statement, or that's on my bank statement. And they'll say, okay, so I think I have a general understanding. And it's funny, because I've been posting things on social media in the past couple of weeks, because I just had a client in that situation. Their scores, they thought, were like a 696, 697, and like a 702, something like that. When the lender pulled credit, it was really a 589, a 602, and a 611. So about 100-point drop in between a newer version of the FICO versus FICO Classic. So the biggest thing to kind of take away from all of this is, if you're thinking that you want to be able to purchase a home anytime in the next 6 to 12 months, it's getting the correct data and making sure you're actually seeing the scores that the lenders are going to use. And that's the most important thing.
Yeah. Why would they be so different? What you said, the Classic versus
right.
Yeah.
Yeah. So since the year 2000, we've been using FICO Classic. And then since then, in 2008, they built FICO version 8, 2014, FICO version 9, 2020, FICO version 10. So they keep building newer versions and passing that out to the public, but each version analyzes the data differently. So it's all the same data, Equifax, Experian, and TransUnion, and all your creditors, your credit cards, your mortgage, your auto loans, everything you're paying on monthly is in there. It's just a matter of how does FICO Classic analyze the data versus FICO 8, 9, or 10, and they analyze it differently, generally in a, let's call it, nicer way, so that those scores are actually higher than the FICO Classic.
All right. Okay. What's the type of turnaround time? Let's say you have let's say 600 credit score, and what did we talk about? What's the top limit for mortgages? 740, I think Mike Rogers said last time we talked, Dan.
Yeah.
What's the time frame in order to get, let's say I've got 600, I've got a couple issues. How quickly could I get that up? I know I can't get it up to 740 if it's landing at 600 right now in a short period of time, but what type of improvements are we seeing in a 6 to 12 month time frame?
So it all depends on what is causing the issues. Yeah. So somebody that is dealing with accounts that are currently past due and they have multiple late payments in the past 3 to 6 months on their credit cards or car loan or whatever it is, those are going to be a much longer path up to that 740 range versus somebody that is just maxed out on their credit cards. They're paying them on time, but they're all maxed out. And financially, they just need to pay those all to a zero balance. And then, boom, they can see their scores jump up. Conversely, what type of negative information is there, right? So what if there's a open charge off or collection? If it's an open charge off or collection that has already been paid, that's going to be a lot more difficult versus if we're able to go in there and control the process and pay it properly so that the client is financially protected and giving us the ability to remove the negative account information off of the credit. So there's a lot of determining factors, but generally speaking, in 6 to 12 months, you can move the needle, maybe not 600 to 740. That's a big jump,
yeah.
But depending on what the issues are, but you definitely 50 to 100 point increase in that 6 to 12 month period is generally something that can be done as long as everything is done properly.
Yeah, that makes sense. What I mean, obviously I know what collections is, and a charge off is what happens when it's charged off? I thought it was some type of IRS thing that the creditor charges it off and they're able to write something off. What happens if they do that and then you go to pay a bill? Because obviously from what you're saying, it's still on your credit. It's a bill that you didn't pay and it's reflected there. How do you resolve something like that?
Yeah, so basically a charge off is an account that is continuously gone late. So you have a credit card, you don't pay it. It goes 30 days late, then 60 days late, then 90 days late, 120, 150, 180. After 6 months of non-payment, they say, okay, now we're charging it off. Now, at that point, they may or may not send you a 1099, but more importantly, they're probably going to kick it to a collection company. So not only do you have the original creditor that had tried to collect on the debt and was negatively impacting your credit, but when they kick it to a collection company and that collection company now shows up on the credit report, that's a whole new creditor that's now also dragging your score down. So this might go to a zero balance because they've given it off to the collection company, but that negative debt is still sitting there. And what I always tell people to make sure they're not causing more problems for themselves is if an account goes into charge off or collection, do not just call and pay it over the phone and never, ever give out your debit card, credit card, or checking account information, as you want to be financially protected. And the only way to pay these once the settlement letter has been attained is with a money order or a certified bank check. Because if you give them your financial information, I've seen collection companies use that and sell that to other collection companies illegally, obviously, but this is what these companies do.
Yeah.
Jeez.
Didn't realize that at all. That was dirty. As I'm asking these questions, like I think I know what the answer is going to be, and that was not at all.
Yeah. I was like, oh yeah, I know where he's going to lead into this one. I did not know he's going to lead into that.
So how do you go about doing, like, if let's say I don't pay my electric bill and it goes into collections? So how do you appropriately pay that off so it reflects as positive as it can on your credit?
So best case scenario is trying to go back to the original creditor and trying to say, hey, Eversource, can I pay you? I don't trust this collection company. I pay you directly? And in some instances, the original creditor, whether it's the utility, the cell phone, whatever it is, they'll let you pay them directly. You can take that now zero balance letter, give it to the collection company and say, this is no longer a valid debt. I've already resolved it. So that's best case scenario. But let's say that's not viable and Eversource says, we can't help you anymore. Go deal with the collection company. That's where either the client can handle themselves or they can work with somebody like me to contact that collection company, verify the debt, because sometimes collection companies will buy debt, hold it for 30 days, sell it to another company, but still try to collect on it. So they'll call the client and say, well, you got to pay. Oh, well, send me something in writing. Well, we can't do that. Well, the reason they can't do that is because they know they don't want to put anything in writing because they no longer own the debt. But let's say that the debt is valid. The collection company says, here's your settlement letter. Now we're ready to pay it. We use a money order or a certified bank check in order to protect the client financially. And then what we've used over the past 17 years, kind of our secret sauce, is something called the restrictive endorsement, which is verbiage we write on the back of the payment that ultimately says, once they cash it, they're now willing to delete the account off the credit report. So it's giving us the ability to not only bring the balance to zero, but also remove the negative account off the credit. And that's ultimately the goal, because if it just goes from an open collection to a paid collection, even though the balance is zero, the negative information still being there still negatively impacts the scores.
So even after that's done and it's away from the collection, that's when the time starts really for that 6 to 12 months to raise the scores. That's when the time starts.
The time starts once the client starts working on fixing the credit, depending on exactly what the issues are, like bringing the accounts current, or if you're dealing with the collection, it's if what process are you in? Are you in a process where you've already paid the collection and now it's showing zero, but you have to try to dispute it with the credit bureaus through the Fair Credit Reporting Act? That's going to be a little bit longer process, right? More along that 12-month line versus, is the balance open? Are we able to control the process? And if we're able to control it and especially use that restrictive endorsement, maybe within only 3 to 6 months, because we have the documentation we need to force them to remove it, we can see results quicker. Okay. So that's why whenever somebody comes and says, well, I think I'm working on my credit myself, stop. Because I guarantee you the guy on TikTok is not telling you the correct thing to do. Yeah. I was trained by John Olsheimer, who worked at Equifax and FICO. So this is coming from the horse's mouth about how they built the system and what can and can't be done to actually go in there and properly do these things.
I want to back up for a sec. Back to that selling the debt. They can't produce something in paper. So Eversource ships something out. They hire a collections. They sell. They sell the debt to the collection company. How does that process even work? I owe Eversource $1,000 and I'm not paying it, and they send it to a collection agency. What is that? What does that even mean?
So there's two ways collection companies get involved. Mm-hmm. One is as a third-party collector. So Eversource says, hey, portfolio recovery, we're going to hold the debt, but you go collect on it, you get a percentage of it. The other way is to say, hey, we're Eversource, we don't want it anymore. Portfolio recovery, go pay for it. It's now your debt, and then we're out of the picture. So there's two types of ways that a collection company could get involved, and then they either own the debt or they're collecting as a third party. But either way, they're supposed to have the validity of being able to collect on that debt, meaning they either have the permission to collect on it or they have the ownership of it to collect on it. But if they no longer have that permission, or if they've now sold it, because collection companies will sell the debt from one company to another, if they do that, they're not supposed to be able to collect on it in any way, shape, or form, nor can they report themselves to the credit bureaus anymore because the debt's no longer valid with them, because they should be done with it. But unfortunately, there are a lot of collection companies that aren't above board and will collect on debt that they're not supposed to, even to the point where in our industry, I'm not sure if you guys have heard of it, it's called zombie debt. Have you guys heard of that?
I haven't, no.
Okay. So zombie debt is when a collection company will buy a bankruptcy debt, meaning like somebody goes through bankruptcy, the debt's discharged, they don't have to pay anything. There's collection companies that will actually go and purchase portfolios of debt that was included in bankruptcy and harass the clients to try to collect on it. and they specifically prey on the people that they feel maybe like the elderly, where they feel like they can bully them into, well, it doesn't matter that it was included in bankruptcy, you still owe us the money. And the people get scared, they don't know how to defend themselves, and they end up paying for other debt that they're not even liable for anymore.
Is that legal?
I was going to say,
absolutely not.
No. Okay. So it's not.
No, and just to be very clear, a lot of things that happen in the world of the Wild West of collections is not legal. And throughout the years, things have definitely calmed down. But I remember watching like 5 or 6 years ago, like 90 Minutes or a special news report where some guy actually put like a pin on there with a video, and he went into collection agency up in Buffalo. And they were just showing the tactics of what these guys do and how illegal it is. And since then, there have been a lot of fines and a lot of regulation, but there's still companies out there. And the point is, you just want to make sure that you're always protected and you're not allowing them any way to get access to yourself, your information, or do something or collect on something they shouldn't be.
Yeah. All right. So I'm going to back up again, back to that same scenario there.
Yeah.
I owe Eversource $1,000. They don't want anything to do with it. They sell it to Dan. Dan sells that debt to you. Dan is still harassing me. I pay Dan. Like, what is happening at that point? Is Dan giving you the like? Is they just stealing my money? What's
basically happening? And unfortunately, that's what ends up happening, because Dan now has no legal right to collect on that debt because he sold it to me, and I'm now the owner of that debt, and I'm going to be coming after you. Yeah. But you've already now called and paid Dan, and you might say, "Well, I paid him." Be like, "Well, doesn't matter. Did you get anything in writing?" Well, no, he was really loud on the phone, and I got scared, so I just gave him money. I gave him my debit card. Well, unfortunately, you paid somebody that didn't even own the debt anymore, and now you're out that money because I own the debt, and you have to pay me if you wanted to not deal or not bother you with your credit report anymore.
It's crazy.
Sickening, really.
Dan, why would you do that? Why would you do that to both of us?
Come on,
Dan.
Hey, sorry.
Dan's got to feed his family. I get it.
I like the right thing to do at the time. All right,
I get it.
Yeah.
So what you got to keep using the Eversource. One thing I do come into contact a lot is medical. So when you kind of touch into the medical piece a little bit, is that a whole different animal, a whole different ball game than Eversource? Or
yes, completely different. So you have your traditional, what I call traditional charge-offs and collections, your credit cards, your utilities, your cell phone bill, a car repossession. I've seen a lot of car repossessions lately, and I want to talk about that in just a minute. But in terms of medical debt, as of last year, they passed new laws that completely flipped it on its head about how medical collections work. Okay. Number one, medical collections can't impact your credit for up to 12 months from the time the event happened. So you went to the doctor, the hospital, they have to deal with either you or the insurance for a 12-month period before they can give it to a collection company. Now, let's say it has been 12 months and they give it to a collection company. The biggest part of that is if the debt is under $500, it will not show up on your credit report. Doesn't mean you don't owe the money, and it doesn't mean they're not trying to collect it, but they can't report it to the credit bureaus. Okay. If it's over $500, it will show up at the credit bureaus. It will impact your credit, and that negative information could drop your score 50 or 100 points. However, because it's medical, once you get it resolved, either through insurance or out of pocket, within 30 days of having that on your credit report, it will be deleted once it's been resolved because it's medical.
Okay.
So that is something that they came out with last year that was incredibly helpful. So many people's scores had gone up because of that.
It seems like a lot of people get into trouble for something that they couldn't control, car accident or something like that. They're up, above their neck in bills, and all right, that's good. I didn't know they passed a law last year. Should watch the news. Yep. That's good.
Yeah. Well, I mean, even the people in the industry don't even know it's there. I have my pulse on it, and John still updates me about things. So I pay attention to that. The other thing, though, going back to the car repossession, and this is a very unique situation. Obviously, not everybody has it, but it comes up more often than you would think. And what the ultimate idea here is, somebody's paying on a car, and for whatever reason, they can't make payments anymore. And then they stop paying, and they either do a voluntary repossession or a forced repossession. Doesn't matter which way it goes, whether they come and snatch its car at 4 a.m. or they drive it to the dealership, say, I can't afford this anymore, take it back. Here's how that works. If there's a balance of $20,000 in the car at that time that's happening, meaning it's being financed, right? You have a balance of $20,000, you're making your monthly payments, now you stop and the car gets taken back. They take that, sell it at auction for, let's say, $5,000. You're now left with a $15,000 balance. Even though you don't own the car at all anymore, you're now responsible for that $15,000 balance. And a lot of people don't realize that's how it works. And if that $15,000 isn't paid within 30 days, that's going to show as an auto repossession collection on your credit report. And that's really going to negatively whack your scores, again, 50 to 100 points easily.
What, like these collection companies, I didn't realize that they really bought the debt. I thought they were all just kind of hired and they got a percentage. So let's say my Ford gets repossessed and, you know, I owe 20 grand on it and they get 5 at auction and that 15 grand is owed there. Dan goes ahead and buys that. Like, what is, you probably don't know this, but what is Dan paying for that $15,000 debt? Do you know, like, where are we looking?
It's not as cheap as you think. And they kind of injure you all. They pay pennies on the dollar. They really don't. For the debt that's 6.5 years old, they might be paying a lot less than something that just happened last month, right? Because it's all about the perceived idea of, am I going to get money out of this?
Stability.
So that one for 15,000, maybe Dan paid 10,000 for it, right? And he's hoping that he's going to get you to pay 12,000, and so he just made $2,000.
Yeah,
as an example, right? But if it's 6.5 years old, maybe he only paid $500 for it because he only has 6 months left to collect on it. Obviously, nobody else has been able to collect on it, so the likelihood that he's going to even make any money on it is a lot less.
Yeah. So
it kind of depends on the situation.
Yeah. What? And there might not even be statistics. I got all these crazy questions. I don't know. They're not helping. It's not what the people
brain go
that are tuning in want to hear. This is all just for my entertainment, I guess, at this point. Like, what percentage of debt that goes into collections is actually collected versus not? Do you have any clue?
I actually don't have that statistic. No. I don't.
Be interesting.
I'd say there's thousands of collection companies out there. So it must be profitable enough to get people to do it. I mean, going back to the unscrupulous collection companies, people, and a little bit of a takeaway from the zombie debt type of thing, there are collection companies that will buy debt that's 6.5 years old at 5 cents on the dollar, because what they'll do is they'll call these people and they'll harass the bejesus out of them, get them to pay $10, only because the only thing, when a debt goes into a charge off or collection status, that creates a date. And there's now 7 years to collect on that debt in order to be able to get paid, right? After 7 years, it has to fall off. But if it's 6.5 years old and a payment is made on it, it just re-aged the debt for another 7 years.
Oh,
okay. Yep.
So that's another thing that happens is, like, people will be like, oh, wow, I owed $25,000 and they let me pay $100 to resolve the debt. I'm like, no, they didn't. Yeah. I'm like, they just got you to pay $100 so they could re-age the debt. And then that collection company who wanted to do that is now, they bought it at 5 cents on the dollar. They're now going to sell it at 50 cents on the dollar because it's now viable for another 7 years.
Yeah. All right.
This is unbelievable.
I know it is. Yeah. So what happens to that debt after 7 years? I've never made a payment on it in 7 years.
Yep.
They can't collect on it after 7 years, or?
Correct. So it potentially can fall off.
Yeah.
But with that being said, that happens a lot less than you think, because in most cases, well prior to that 7 years, there's going to get attorneys involved. Yeah. And here's a real life example. I spoke to a lady last September. She had a Chase charge off. Okay. So didn't even go to a collection company yet. Last September, Chase charge off for $4,000. And I was like, listen, I can represent you as power of attorney. Let's settle this before it gets worse. Well, I don't know. Let me think about it. I'll get back to you. Disappeared. Okay. 3 months later, on December 15th, I get a call, an email, and a text, all within the same 5 minutes, because her HR department just walked into her office, handed her a letter that they just got served that they have to garnish her paycheck. So in only 3 months, it went from an open charge off, got it kicked to a collection company, and then got it kicked to an attorney's office and brought it to court and got a wage garnishment. So what it ended up happening is we didn't have to take her on as a client. We spoke to the attorney. They wouldn't settle because they're attorneys. And so she ended up we had to stop the garnishment, which was embarrassing in itself. And then she ended up having to pay the full $4,000 plus attorney fees. Whereas if she dealt with it when it was a charge-off account, we probably would have settled for about half.
Wow.
Yeah, so much. Wow. No wonder these credit card rates are so high. With there's just so much money out there floating around that, all these other companies are buying this debt, and this is totally all new to me. I know nothing about this whole thing.
It's scary too. Like,
yeah,
growing up, you think you're invincible in your 20s and 30s, thinking, whatever. But man, that's bad. That's crazy stuff.
Yeah. All right, so let's bring it back to really probably what the questions we should have been asking from the beginning. How does my brother reaches out to me, not my brother, somebody I know reaches out to me and says, Mike, my credit's not good. I need a credit repair. I say, Stephen Roberts, your guy, contact. What happens from that point? What do you guys do? What do you?
So first and foremost, I do a free consultation.
Mm-hmm.
I have them get their legitimate credit report, not through a lender, because that's going to count as an inquiry, make the credit worse. So we don't want that. So literally the only website I ever recommend to somebody to see the exact same scores that the bank uses is called myfico.com. 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 It has nothing to do with me. It's going directly to the FICO scoring model. And it doesn't count as an inquiry. It doesn't hurt the score at all. The client's going to have to purchase it. It costs $30. But by purchasing it, this is literally the only website that, yes, it's going to give you FICO scores 8, 9, and 10 and all that wonderful stuff. But if they scroll down, they click on a tab that says mortgage scores, they're going to see exactly the same scores that the bank uses. So, and more importantly than that, it's going to provide all the content. I spoke to a client this morning. She had 201 pages of content. She had tons and tons of accounts. A lot of them were student loans. But I have the client get their MyFICO credit report, and then I dive into it. I do a full analysis, line by line, making sure what's happening with each account, and we create a full action plan. And all of that is what I do is part of my being a nonprofit, is a free consultation. I'm giving them education. I'm allowing them to understand what they can do themselves for free without even needing my services to analyze and look at the data. And then at the end of the conversation, they can take that and go with it and work on it themselves. Or in severe situations, if it really makes sense, they can work with me and hire my services to represent them as a power of attorney, or work with the credit bureaus to clean up and remove the negative data, which is generally going to take 6 to 12 months going through the processes that we've talked about today.
I've heard about like people's credit reports having mistakes. Is that legit? Are there really mistakes out there, or are there just things out there that you go to challenge something and this guy doesn't feel like dealing with it? He never responds to it, and eventually it's able to get removed from the credit report. What are these mistakes that I hear about?
It's what I like to say, it's selective amnesia.
Yeah.
And what I mean by that is when I do that action plan, and I just had one yesterday where I did the action plan and I said, look, you have 5 collections. I don't know what that is. I don't know. I've never heard of this company in my life. Okay. That was yesterday. Today, I followed up with them this morning. Oh yeah. I called the companies. Turns out they're all legitimate. Mm-hmm. So all of a sudden, all these things that I'm going to dispute them, they never happened. I said, listen, don't dispute them. That's not going to get you anywhere. Have a conversation with the company. And she called each individual company, had a conversation. Turns out it was like Citibank Home Depot card, and it just said Citibank. She didn't realize it was a Home Depot, and like things like that. So that concept of like, well, these accounts don't belong to me, let me just dispute them. No, don't dispute them. If you feel like something isn't accurate, go have a conversation with the company. Hey, why is this collection? Tell me what this is all about. And let them explain, well, this is what it is. And then one of two things happens. Most of the time it's, oh, okay, now I realize what it is. I guess I should take care of that. Every so often, it legitimately is something they didn't know about, and it's called identity theft. And that's when they work with the fraud department of that creditor. They do a police report, an ID theft affidavit, and by doing that documentation and getting it to the fraud department, generally within 30 to 60 days, that's removed.
Mhm.
On the other side of it, what if it's just a late payment, right? Like, oh, well, they hit me with a late payment in January on my Macy's card, but I was never late. Look, here's the proof. Great. Don't dispute it, because just disputing it in itself isn't going to get you anywhere. If the creditor, in that case Macy's, thinks it's legitimate, they're just going to verify it and it's going to stay there. If something isn't accurate, contact the creditor, have a conversation with them, get them to agree that it's not accurate, and the most important thing, get a document. Because you could have a 3-hour conversation, they fully agree that they're going to delete it, they're going to remove everything, and then 6 months later, it's never been removed. And the question always is, well, did you get something in writing? Well, no, but they sounded so great on the phone. If you don't have something in writing from them, the conversation never happened. So it's all about documentation.
Yeah. I feel like everybody should be utilizing you. Not I don't know, with all this stuff out there. Makes me afraid to go to my FICO and get my report. See what's on there right now.
Yeah. Well, I think that's I know you're jokingly saying that, but that's actually a huge thing that I see is it's the fear of the unknown. Like, oh my God, how bad is it really going to be? And what I generally tell people is, yeah, sometimes there's stuff to take care of, but turning yourself into an ostrich and putting your hand in the sand is not going to resolve it and could potentially make it worse. Because if there's things on there that could get like that Chase example I gave earlier, where it's going to get kicked to a collection company and to an attorney's office, if you don't deal with it, when it's a little bump, deal with it. Don't wait till it's a molehill, because then it's going to be even more of an issue. So I think the best advice I can give anybody is look at your credit. And when somebody says, well, when should I do that? Today. Literally today is the day to do it. Yeah. Well, I don't want to buy a house for 2 years from now. Great. Look at it today. Because if there's nothing wrong, now you can sleep well at night. If there's things you need to address, then you need to address it. And what about, oh, well, there's nothing wrong, but I only have one open account on my whole credit profile. Well, guess what? That's not enough. You need to go open up 2 secured credit cards to keep building and establishing positive credit history. If you wait till 2 years from now, and then you want to do it, and you still only have that one account, your credit's not going to be strong. If you open it up today, 2 years from now, you have 3 open active accounts, your credit's going to be a lot stronger. So don't be scared. Look at your credit as soon as today in order to make sure that you're prepared for whatever the future holds.
Yeah. So before, I don't remember if it was before we went live or not, I had said that most of the leads that we get, most of the property inquiries or, how do I go about buying a house or requests for any information, almost all of them say my credit's not strong. Should we, and they know that, they don't know exactly what it is. They probably know what some of the issues are. They probably know the extent of it. Would you recommend, and they know they're not going to be buying a house for 2 to 3 years, what would you say to them at that point? Contact someone like you, contact a lender to kind of refer you to them? What would you do in that situation?
They can do it themselves. They can go to myfico.com and they can look at it themselves and just kind of see where they're at with things. And then if they have questions, certainly reach out to me. Okay. What I would suggest is if they go there and they see things that are on there and they think to themselves, oh, well, I'll just go ahead and start taking care of this. Stop. Talk to me. And I'm just going to kind of pat myself on the back in this regard, in the sense of not somebody like me. Because I'll tell you, in Connecticut, there's nobody else that I feel 100% confident knows what they're talking about in how to understand credit and how to explain it and how to actually help clients. There's lots of credit repair companies within Connecticut and within the surrounding area, like Lexington Law or creditrepair.com. They're national, super huge conglomerate companies. They will not provide any direct service for you. They're not going to explain it. And if all they want to do is sign you up for $50 a month for the next 4 years. So make sure that you're doing your due diligence. Look at the credit report yourself. But if you have questions, then yes, come to me. I'll give you the free consultation. I'll review it. And then we can move forward from there. And again, most of the time, you're not going to hire my services, but at least you'll fully understand what you need to be able to do moving forward.
Yeah.
That's key.
Yeah. I don't know why we wouldn't hire you. And I know. Like,
anybody who has issues, yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Appreciate any questions, Dan? We're gonna log off here, and I'm gonna have about 30 questions by the time I go to bed today. No.
Yeah. This is super educational. Like I'm mind blown of how deep this goes.
Yeah. Good. Well, I'm glad I blew your mind, and hopefully I blew everybody's mind that's watching this now. And I'm always happy to come back. So if you ever want me to come back and we can do part 2, we can keep going. I mean, I could talk on this for hours. So always happy to help.
Yeah, I actually have a text from somebody that said, I want a referral. So that's good news. I'll hook you guys up later.
My dad just texted me too. Yeah.
All right.
That's awesome.
All right. Yeah, I would love to have you back on with more directed questions as I process this. Really appreciate your time. Thanks a lot for coming on. And do you have a specific way for people to reach out to you? Your email or phone number, anything you want me to? What's the best way?
Yeah, absolutely. So they go to bedrockcreditamerica.org.
Okay.
So you can go there. If you want to reach out to me, my phone number is 203-404-7209. So feel free to give me a call. And then on the website, you'll see my email address is stephenrobert@bedrockcreditamerica.org. So feel free to reach out. I'm always happy to help, and look forward to coming back and answering more questions and doing another. You guys had a lot of good scenarios, and we did a nice little deep dive on, especially in the world of the collections. And there's so much more to touch on. We didn't even talk about debt utilization. And let's kind of put a hook. What we talked a lot about what we're currently using. Just wait till I start talking about what we're about to be using in 2025.
Yeah.
You thought I blew your minds then? Wait till I talk to you about trending data. It's literally going to be a game changer, and it's important because how people pay their credit cards today is going to dictate what their scores look like 2 years from now.
Oh man, I want to stay on my.
I know.
I want to know.
So. Till next time, right?
Till next time. Yeah.
No.
Next time, tomorrow morning at 9 o'clock, we'll be talking about it.
Yeah.
Exactly.
All right. We'll have you back on soon. Thanks a lot, Stephen.
Yeah. Appreciate
Awesome,
it.
guys. Thank you so much. Have a good one.